My notes.
You're listening to the Pintcast, where smart people in healthcare come to make noise. Here's your host, Jimmy McKay.
I want to say big thanks to Empower EMR. If your clinic is stuck in an EMR that slows you down, that's not cool, man. Empower gives you speed, clean workflows, and features PTs actually asked for, the stuff you asked for. Better notes, faster documentation, smoother operations. Those three, those are the things. People keep asking for them. I know because I'm in the Facebook groups with you, and those are the things you're asking for. All those things wrapped up in customer support that doesn't ghost you. That's also what you're asking for. Upgrade your clinic's brain with Empower EMR. They also know switching gives you a feeling way down deep. They understand that. They make it easy. So go kick the tires. Go slow. Do it right. EmpowerEMR.com. That is EmpowerEMR.com. Wow, look at this. Surprise. Today's guest. Where most physical therapy clinics, they don't fail because of bad clinicians. They struggle because of invisible systems. This was not on the syllabus, kids, in PT school, unfortunately. I can't change that, but I can at least enlighten you now. And every day, time just leaks out through scheduling friction. Shh, listen right now. You can hear it. Oh, it's not good. How do I fix it? Documentation drag, billing delays, workflow bottlenecks that nobody ever trained you to see. It's not your fault. You weren't trained, but you do have to own it, because if you don't, that dripping, you're still going to pay for it. And it doesn't really show up on a balance sheet. It does, but you don't know where to look on the balance sheet. It's sort of in between the lines. It shows up as burnout, staffing stress, cash flow anxiety. Where's it coming from? I have a full schedule. Then why do I feel fragile? We're going to talk about those things. The invisible, hairy, scary things. So our guest today has spent more than 2 decades. I want to see how he feels about that. 2 decades, I get to say now, inside of those invisible systems where the leaks are, helping design and evolve the operational backbone of PT practices that are still around. Because if you don't fix the leaks, your boat don't float. From first patient contact to discharge and beyond, this guy's, again, 2 decades. You see things come and go. He's worked across product, sales, marketing, and operations in this space. His resume in theory is boring. It's just one thing, doing this for 21 years. That's when you know the nooks and crannies. So let's bring him in, Sharif Zeid. Sharif, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jimmy. Always a pleasure to be here and excited. Yeah, there's always something new to talk about. That's for sure.
Isn't that crazy that there's always something new to talk about? And you look at this one little area of our practice, and even that little area of our profession still is enough to annoy people, scare people, put people out of business, and enough things always changing to still have stuff to talk about, right?
Totally. I mean, I jokingly say I started in the PTEMR world when it was a covered wagon, and now we've got space shuttles going to Mars or whatever. So
Right.
it's definitely a change, and we still call it an EMR. And when I started, it really was EMR, like documentation, and now it's the everything engine, or that's what it's supposed to be, right? That's the promise. So yeah, things are changing, and I will say, the pace of change, it's not linear anymore. It's exponential. I mean,
A hockey stick.
The expectations, the desires, the promise continues to grow, and so do the challenges. So it's just a mixed thing, and there's always good things, there's always bad things, there's challenges, there's opportunities, and the whole thing in between.
Yep. So you sit down with practices that are across specialties, across timelines, brand new, maybe not started yet, brand new, legacy, all those things. Someone like you could sort of like see things coming. Like I imagine most of the time, the clinician or the business owner is sitting there explaining things to you, and you're probably biting your tongue, waiting for them to run out of air before you go, oh, okay, I've seen this before. Like you probably have it figured out in the first 90 seconds, and then you're just waiting for them to really say where the problems are.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, definitely working with practices all across the spectrum, right? So what's the same and what's different? They're all outpatient rehab. That's our thing. That's what we do. So PTOT speech, no inpatient, no skilled nursing, nothing like that. So that's the same, if you could even call that the same.
Right.
And yeah, what's different is where they are in their practice life, startup to mature, the size of the practice, solo to the supporting, trying to support dozens or hundreds of clinicians, the single location, the multi-location. And then really an increasingly differentiating factor is just where they are in their business cycle. Are they shooting for growth? Are they trying to maintain stability? Are they struggling? What are they trying to achieve? Like you said, some are pushing for that next level of profit or revenue. And others are just like, hey, I've just got to make it to hire the next clinician. Others yet are like, I just got to get out of treatment. I need to hire some people and kind of change my role in the clinic from being, working in the business to working on the business kind of thing, as they say.
All right. So if I changed your role for just a second, we pretend if you go from what you do in EMR and technology to a plumber, when you walk into a practice where the plumber's like, something's leaking, they're like, in their mind, they're probably like, it's one of these 4 places. Let me go check those in order of importance. When you get brought into a practice from across hundreds of clinics that you've seen, where are the practices that you work with quietly losing the most time every week without realizing it? So we'll start with time. Where are they losing time the most?
Yeah, I think the number one answer I would give to that is what I would just put under an umbrella called one word: adoption. So many practices have lots of tools, and they like don't know what to do with them, or they're not using them to the fullest extent that they can. And that happens for a variety of reasons. But the one I see the most often, and honestly, if I'm being honest, the most frustrating, is they're letting perfect be the enemy of good. So there is no perfect system. There is no software product you can buy that's like going to be check off every single box. And I see some practices trading off, hey, it can't do this 10%, last 10% I want it to do. So I'm not going to do the 90% that it can do. There are always trade-offs. If you have a 7-figure budget for software and you want to go have something purpose built for your practice, you can get exactly what you want. Honestly, maybe not even in that case, but let's just be high level here. You could probably get what you want if you're willing to spend that kind of money. But even the largest practices, even the largest chains are not building custom software. So that means that no matter what you hear from whomever is selling you on a product, there's always going to be some imperfection, something that's not 100% on target with what you're trying to do with your workflow or your people or your patients or whatever. A great concrete example of this is very simple. Online booking, it used to be a very taboo some years ago. Now it's much more accepted, but there's still a lot of practices we talk to that like won't let patients book online. Why? Because it's not perfect. It can't replace the front desk. They know I'm special. I have this special scheduling process that needs to be done. And, you can say with Empower, you can usually mimic the vast majority of those rules and those settings. But yeah, there might be an edge case or a fringe case where, the system may allow a booking where your front desk person would have blocked them out, or vice versa, it disallows a booking that you may have wanted. But, again, if you're hitting 95% of cases, like, what are you doing? Why aren't you offering that? That's your time that you're leaking right there in your front desk. That's your patient visits that you're leaking on the side there, because you're, again, letting perfect be the enemy of frankly great in some cases, but certainly better in most. So it's just one example. There are dozens of them, but implement, adopt, use, do. Those are like the verbs I would harp on constantly.
Yeah. Does adoption also encompass what I talked about in the intro, which is change? Listen, I like my bank. Maybe I don't like my bank, but I'm thinking, God, the amount of things I'll have to do to get rid of my bank, even if great was right across the street, I'm like, that'd be so much better. I'm thinking, not even thinking, I'm feeling of what change feels like. And then it doesn't even crack the top 10. Does that prevent, I imagine that's got to be up there.
Absolutely. I mean, change is like this concept that's far beyond just business and practice, right? It's hard to change in your personal life. It's hard to deal with somebody who is changing for better or for worse. There's these, all these books about self-help and change and all these things. In business, it can be true. There oftentimes can be friction that is, also being generated, I would say, from external, like, your team might be giving you friction, your patients might be giving you friction in just beyond your own innate, inertia that's causing you to have heartburn with change. But this is also a surmountable problem in the business world, I think, or in the practice world, right? Just make the changes modest, make them consistent, so you're changing regularly, but you're biting off small things. The other end of the scale with adoption of too little adoption is too much adoption too fast. And this is how you trash your team, right? Is if like, if let's say you watch this podcast, like I'm really motivated by Sharif, which would be a miracle. And you're like, I'm going to go implement 93 things on Monday morning. And you go in there, the way your team's going to perceive it is now you're just yelling at them. There's no rhyme or reason, too much, too fast. And then all of your initiatives will fail. So got to find this seesaw balance between, trying to make steady incremental progress in the practice and blowing everybody out and or not doing anything at all, which is
without naming anything specific.
Yeah.
How does someone pick which one? Hey, I've got a list of 93. I'm hearing what Sharif is saying. I get it. He's right. How do you know which is the one to say, okay, I'm going to do this one this quarter? How do you pick? How do you decide?
Yeah, I mean, here's the two answers, right? The formal answer, which I actually think is a good exercise, and if you can do it, it would be great. You take the 93 things, you try and rank them by effort and payoff. And then you make a grid and you do the low effort, high payoff ones. That's like the business textbook answer. The not business textbook answer is you're the owner. You probably already intuitively know what your biggest, like I don't have enough patience, or I have too many patients, or I don't have enough profit, which can often be like too many patients, but not the right mix of patients to deliver the profitability that you want. So, I think a lot of effort, and I'm a business guy, right? By education, I went to business school and all that stuff, and you can get really wrapped up in the consulting method of thinking. Sometimes it's just too much. Like intuitively, what's your issue? Like what's going on this week? Wow, really high cancels and no-shows. Okay, there's your problem. Let's work it. Not enough patients. We didn't bring enough evals in last week, so our pipeline's a little bit low. Okay, work that problem. That's a top of funnel problem. We looked at the numbers and we're billing record amounts and our reimbursements are in the trash can. Okay, now you have a billing problem. So intuition's fine. And I think it's underrated sometimes, and people want to go read the book or ask your favorite AI, what should I work on in my practice, when you probably already know. And last thought is, if you don't know, if you really have no idea, which would be crazy, then go ask your team. Maybe they'll tell you what the problem is. Hey, I'm burned out on this, or I can see the cancellations hitting my desk, or I'm having trouble collecting money, and here's why, and work those problems.
If you ask people for their opinion, they will give it to you. Don't worry about that. They will give it to you.
Sure. If you have a team of 10, you'll have 12 opinions. So, because you can ask the same person and get the same different opinions on 2 different days on the same thing. Right. So,
all right, let's go to bottlenecks. Points of friction is the fancy word, right?
Yeah.
If you had to name 3 most common, the things that pop up, again, you've been doing this for 21 years, the 3 most common workflow bottlenecks in outpatient PT today, what shows up almost everywhere?
Almost everywhere. I have to say, I the owner oftentimes pops up as a bottleneck.
They don't want to hear that, though.
It's maybe not the most popular thing to say, but I think there's some level of understanding that this is an issue, and sometimes it can be too much control. Like one of the biggest windows we get into a practice is during onboarding. It's a time of great change. They're switching systems. The team is doing stuff. I would never call an onboarding a stress-free time. There's no such thing. So you're watching a practice under stress, and usually the ones that go well are where it's for lack of a better, it's like sort of a democratic process, right? The different constituencies in the practice, the front desk, the billers, the providers are all involved in their respective ways in that onboarding. And it has a tendency to go less well when there's like a singular point of contact and it's always the owner, and the other folks aren't on the calls, and they're not given leeway to ask their own questions. So, that's just one window into how you look at it, but you can look at all of those things. Or and I also, when I review a call, for example, and I hear at the end that all the tasks in the call were assigned to the owner, all of them, like, I'll do that. Oh, I'll put that on my plate. I'll take that to my list. That's really when you start to have, now it ties into the same theme, which is delegation also has to include some measure of letting go, some measure of accepting good and not perfect at some cases and sometimes. But you know what, like the good that you had to put in 10% effort versus the perfect that you had to put 120% effort into as an owner, with all these different things that you've got to do. So that's number one. Number two is, not investing in your systems. So, it's funny transition to go from this onboarding conversation, but like that's a time of known investment of time into a system. You're going to have to put some time in. Don't stop. You have to keep investing in the systems and in the people who run those systems in order to continue to maximize them. First of all, like we just talked about, the system itself is probably changing. Like there's new stuff happening. So where are you? Are you keeping up with that stuff? Are you taking advantage of it? And AI is just the latest in that litany of things. And again, it's driving the pace up very high. And you shouldn't worry about chasing like an unholy pace that's going to kill your practice, but you need to continue to evolve and do things. And so like if you talk to a practice and they essentially tell you they're doing things the same way they were doing them, say 5 years ago, I mean, COVID now was in 2020, right? The 5 years ago, like 5 years ago, that was 2021. So where are we at? Like if you're doing something the same way then, if you're doing the same processes you were doing in 2018, things have definitely moved and definitely changed. So a bottleneck is just not investing into the system, into the time that's needed into continuing to make the most. And then the last one, I guess I would say for bottleneck is like, I would call it metric fatigue. So there's a lot of, information, like copious amounts of information out there that you can read from all sorts of different sources. And every month somebody invents a new metric that is like super interesting and you can read about it and it sounds great. And then you're just bottlenecking everybody because you're pushing them into some new metric that you just woke up and decided was important that day. And it's not consistent. Whereas the core metrics, that hasn't changed. What's your 90-day plus AR? That hasn't really changed, and for good reason. How many visits did you bring in? How many evaluations? So I think a balance there would be better instead of just trying to slow everybody down with too much stuff to focus on. And I've seen practices where they're trying to track like 36 metrics, and it's so overwhelming that actually none of them get any meaningful attention. And people end up slowing themselves down to try and meet one of them and probably have unintended consequences with others. So it just becomes like a cluster. You don't want that.
I just ask people to envision the middle school custodian and how many keys they have around their keychain. You can't have 78 KPIs. That's not yet. You should have 3. I don't know the answer, but it's not 78, right? It's not 0, but it's not 78.
Totally.
So we talk a lot about clinician burnout. We didn't think we were going to get into this here, but this is where the friction is. So a lot of people will say, "Where's the burnout?" And they'll look around and say, "Well, it's in here. It's in my gut. It's in my heart. It's in my head." But you can actually show friction equals heat, and heat equals burn, and burn out. How much of burnout today? I won't hold you to an actual number, but how much of burnout today is actually operational and not clinical?
Yeah, it's a good question. As a joke, I would have to say, because the kids are always on me, I would have to say 6, 7, just because I'm actually not sure what it means, but I hear it constantly.
I don't know what it means either, but we're still mocking it.
You got to stop saying this. So I would actually take a bold statement and say, the majority of it is really operational. And that's of course coming from somebody who's buried in operational kind of software and so forth. So take it with a grain of salt. But the majority of it is operational. And AI has, again, mixed promise, mixed delivery so far in terms of what it can do. That's not the sales talking. That's just reality of what, and that's not just PT. That's across all industries, right? There's a huge burst, big bubble of AI. We're still all trying to figure out exactly what it can and can't do. But I do think in the documentation realm, things like Ambient Scribe and other AI tools for documentation are showing some meaningful promise after many years of kind of, you just write your note. And so, you've got to take advantage of some of these newer tools. And, again, I'm amazed at the range I see out there in practices, from the cutting edge AI, everything, to basically using an EMR like sort of like a word processor and not really evolving it much more than that. And then there's many practices that are in the middle of that bell curve, which is crazy.
So people are still using Dragon. And I was like, but my man, Dragon was 1997 cutting edge when I was starting in college. That shows you how old I am. I'm like, you're still legitimately using Dragon? And they're like, yeah. And I'm not in the seat that you're in, and I'm still confused.
Yeah. It's a lot. The other thing I have to say is, you know, it's funny how the waves of themes happen. Like you've lived through these because you do this all the time, but like compliance seems to be one of these roller coasters run, right? There'll be high points where everybody's talking about compliance and then it kind of dips and then it comes back. And but like one area is I see that's often needs to be talked about and isn't enough is over documentation, for example. There has become these. So like, what are you asking your therapist to do? The worst case example I can tell you is when we see a practice that is effectively is writing an initial evaluation level note for every visit, including for dailies. So they're seeing the patient, 3 times a week and writing effectively 3 evaluations a week. And they're saying, well, we compliance, we want to make sure our notes are good. And that's all like fair. Okay, I get that. But yeah, I mean, you're going to burn people out and create friction and problems if you ask everybody to write that level note for every visit, every time, for every patient. That's a lot. And so what I would say is you need to really look at all the processes that you do repeatedly, because if you can shave a few minutes off of one of those and you do it 500 times a week, now you get some time back. So there's so many things and so many themes, and they come and they go, and it's kind of crazy sometimes to keep up with them, but I've sort of seen all of them. And last year I feel like was the big year of, maybe 2024 too, but like the big year of hiring conversations. You probably had a lot of guests talk about how to hire and how to make really great job postings and use AI and all that stuff. And then, I found anyways that conversations quieted down a little bit. And I don't know if it's because everybody hired who they wanted. I doubt that's the case.
Yeah.
Or more likely, that we're just in a trough. Like people are just need to take a break from that conversation because the labor market is what it is, and they can't hire, or they've scrounged up what they can and they're moving on. So it'll come back. Everything always comes back. Burnout is a constant thing, etc. And compensation's a constant thing, but they all play in together.
I don't want you to name this person. Not that I think you would. I don't want to hear who they are. But give me an example of what maybe one of the most expensive inefficiency you've ever seen in a clinic that maybe owners don't track. Like maybe you're doing a deep dive with a clinic owner who's like onboarding with you, and you're like, hang on a second. Like that moment you're like, am I reading this right? What's something you've seen that like just even shocked you, even with 21 years experience?
Yeah, the ones that often blow my mind are actually in the billing realm. Like when I talk to a biller and they're like, I effectively manually do anything, one thing, 5 things on each claim. Like really dumb examples. Like I look at every 1,500 form individually, before it's sent. And I can't or won't trust any automation or anything for it to do it for me. I'm going to review every one, and like in an extreme case, review it more than once. This isn't normal stuff. Again, no one should say that 100% of claims will go perfectly 100% of the time. But you have to rely on systems and automation, and frankly, it's not even just a convenience thing anymore. It's a matter of survival. So if you're going to review every claim manually and spend 2 minutes per claim, and you've got a modest sized clinic and doing a few hundred visits over the course of a week, nothing big deal. But I mean, right there, like this will blow your day out. It'll blow your week out to do this. So it blows my mind when I hear that. Because doing individual claim level stuff, it just breaks down so quickly, even at the most and you still have that, you still see that, or even checking each individual billing code and unit.
And here's the thing on that, you correct me if I'm right or wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
just
please.
Because you're doing that doesn't even guarantee it's being done well. So you are guaranteed a lot of effort, but you're not guaranteeing the outcome is even better.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, people will make their no, Jimmy, you're wrong. Of course, we're guaranteeing the outcome, but reality is, no one can guarantee the outcome. And reality is the insurance is using the same things in their quiver.
Right.
They're using automation. That's why they screw up claims sometimes, right? Because they follow a playbook and they just follow it. And there's going to be 5% of claims that have an appeal or a denial that has to be dealt with, and so forth. But they're not going to go through every claim individually. That's crazy and unnecessary in a lot of ways. And so you need to run the business from 40,000 feet. Like, what are our high level metrics? What are we doing? How many? Yeah, I mean, if you're having to work on, if half of your claims are denying, you have a problem. If 2% of your claims are denying, That's not bad. I mean, you can't get away with 0%. You'd love to, but so yeah, it's really the manual processes are the ones that really blow my mind when I hear about stuff like that. And it's a lot of it sometimes is, it's not, of course, ill intent by any stretch. It's usually a lot of it's driven by inertia. Like, this is how we did it. This is how we've always done it, or we've done it since the 90s, or we had a billing system back then, and or even 5-10 years ago, and here's how we did it then. And we learned we had to do this because if we didn't, then, and people start making weird associations. They're like, if I eat a ham sandwich while I do my billing, I never get any denials. So I always have a ham sandwich when I do my billing claims. And you're like, well, hard to argue with results. I mean, I do like a good ham sandwich, so I don't know what to say. Like, it's hard, this is the life of a software person trying to make these weird connections with things, but people have their superstitions. So,
all right. So when clinics let's talk about what happens after. Let's talk about the transformation, as we would say, right?
Yeah.
When clinics do introduce real automation, not just eat a ham sandwich and now we get better results, not just faster clicks or less clicks. Real automation? What usually changes first? Is it staff stress reduces, revenue goes up? What should they expect? What's the canary? Like, oh, we're doing what this guy Sharif said. What should they look for in real terms?
Yeah, I mean, I think, definitely the team feeling, staff feeling is probably the one that is just, it's in front of you every day. It's not a metric, you're just seeing it. So there's no higher compliment to the change, or for us as a vendor, for example, when we hear that from clients, like, hey, everybody on the team's loving it. They're feeling better about it. They're coming to work more excited. They're more productive, more happy, and that we've solved a lot of problems that we had with, say, a legacy system or a prior system that we were transitioning from. So that's definitely just front and center. You have to get through the woods, of that onboarding process, which is, made to be as easy as it can. But again, everybody's got to travel through those woods to get to the other side, and not kind of fall off the wagon prematurely or unnecessarily because it's, we just had a bad day, or there's something that's not perfectly going the same way. So I think the staff one, and then longer term, I think a lot of, vendors in my space, make a lot of hay about, we can make you more money and so forth. I'm not as sure that those are the right claims to be making, or that they're fair claims to be making, because really, I don't know, unless there's a different Aetna out there, or a different United, they're all the same insurance. The fee schedules are all the same. A modern system should be able to get, help you or get your claims out in a pretty short order. So there's some convergence there on those basic things where we're seeing more, differentiation in the things we focus on, are the marketing, the automation of core tasks, obviously AI-driven workflows to help cut down on manual workflows. And that's really where the money's at these days in terms of what are you really looking for, and predicated upon the practice actually implementing them. So, but you can definitely get some more visibility into stuff, hopefully make some better decisions, like about where the practice should go, and that sort of thing. So I think, staff team is where you'd see it. Hopefully you hang on to an employee who is maybe borderline. Maybe they come in and they're like, you know what, this change really helped me. I'm spending more time with my family, and I'm going to stay, or I don't need that raise. Nobody ever says that, but like something like that to help ease things a little bit.
So you're saying you're making the more real claim, which is something I don't see a lot of people who do what you do often, which is, hey, listen, can we make you more money? I think the more clear line and the shorter line is, I can show you where to stop losing time. And I learned a long time ago that time equals money. So, but you're saying I can prove this. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to dangle the carrot like more money, save more. But what you're saying is, hey, listen, this is a process. If we, going back to my plumber analogy, if we shore up the leaks, in theory, we should be able to see more money. But what we can really work on now is put your head down to this. It's spending less or losing less. That should be a very straight line and a very short line to making more. But those two things are not the same.
They're not precisely the same. Yeah, and working happier too. I think there's
Yeah.
something about satisfaction that does matter. It especially matters to your team. They don't have the ownership maybe that you do, obviously, where you have a direct, like, hey, if I make this company practice worth more, I'm worth more at exit,
Correct.
which was never a conversation 5 years ago. But now, if any conference you go to, all you
Totally.
hear about is multiples and exits and private equity and all these different terms that never were in the lexicon a few years ago. But your team, these folks are working hard, for your practice. They're working hard for their own personal future. So there's a happiness factor quotient there that's been that intangible in the hiring process that you try and hear people articulate all the time. And so that's meaningful as well. And you just want to run. I mean, I have very traditional business values, I guess. So I think you should just run a good, clean, well-functioning business, and that means like your system and processes are good. And when I'm given the opportunity to talk to or address a group, I always ask them to think about what companies they're having the best experiences with right now. And then when you do a little exercise, why are they doing well? It always comes down to the same thing. Their operations are really smooth. Like, that's what makes a great experience with a business. So it is the Amazon model. Like, Amazon's website hasn't changed that much, actually. If you look at it in the last 10 years, they kind of still looks the same. The product pages look similar. They've made more information, but it's a similar layout. But their operations are unbelievable. I mean, the next day, the 2-day, as soon as you add something to your cart, they're moving the product closer to you if it's not already. So when you think about practices, the ones that are making the booking easy, the ones that are making the intake easy, the ones that are sending you like nice curated emails, this is all a level of professionalism that really resonates with people. And it's a subtle resonation. It's not like, man, that was the best thing ever. It's just like, wow, they kind of have it together. Like, they just seem like they have it together. And that's what I think impresses patients and referring sources, is when it all just seems to just work and nobody thinks about it. It's all background stuff, and like, it's pretty good.
I want to make this part of a series. I sent you a couple topics because I think these things are not in a silo. So this will be part one. I do want to what's called front tease, which is look for part two. We're going to focus next on AI and PT. What's real? What's hype? What will actually change, instead of buying the hype, right? And then the third part of this really will be from full schedules to full profit. How do you go from beginning to end? Why? And then where most busy clinics still struggle financially. So those will be coming up. But before we wrap up this episode, we bring you the parting shot.
This is the parting shot. One last mic drop moment. No pressure. Just your legacy on the line.
You've done this before.
That's no big deal.
No pressure. Your legacy.
Yeah.
Because when it's on the internet, my man, you know it. Now, but I feel like you could pick 6, 7 things from the episode today to reiterate, but what would you want to stamp on people's brains, particularly people either who are running a practice, who want to do that? What's your parting shot that they should just, if you're going to give them one thing to hold on to, what is it?
My parting shot would be, it's 2026. Your biggest task this year is to separate out signal from noise. That's it. Like, there's too much. I don't know. Am I contributing to too much on this podcast? I hope not. I hope I've delivered something valuable to some people and something resonates, but there's so much signal out there. Yeah. And there's also so much noise, and you've got to, like, you cannot possibly keep up with everything you're hearing. You cannot possibly do everything every talking head is suggesting. You've got to think about, what is your practice? It's January right now. Where do you want to be in December? And what are you going to do to get from here to there? And I don't know. In my experience, you're judged, or your outcomes are as much by what you say no to as what you say yes to. So if you can't get some focus, your team won't have any focus. And you'll be sitting here in another year saying, we didn't really make any progress because we didn't really know exactly what finally we wanted to work on. So find your signal and get on that.
I like that. Find your signal.
Yeah.
I would end with, and I heard this from someone else, I forget who it was, that said, there are people dumber than you making more money with less stress. So that should piss you off. And it should also motivate you, like, hey, maybe I'm overthinking a lot of these things. Maybe I'm listening to too much noise and not enough signal. And there are people dumber than you making more money with less stress. Let's focus on that. Don't be jealous. Be motivated by that. EmpowerEMR.com if you want to go a little bit deeper into this. Take one little step. Sharif's not going to handcuff you to anything. but reach out to Empower as an organization. Appreciate your time, Sharif. Thanks for this, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you back at part 2 and part 3. And maybe this is your signal versus noise ratio that we need to focus on.
Right on.
That's it for this one, but we're just getting warmed up. Smash follow, send it to a friend, or crank up the next episode. Want to go deeper? Hit us at ptpintcast.com. Or find us on YouTube and socials at ptpintcast. And legally, none of this was advice. It's for entertainment purposes only. See, Keith, we read the script. Happy now?